Before the Second World War, American innovation was largely stagnant. The Great Depression had starved the country of capital. Research and development were luxuries the nation couldn't afford. It took the existential threat of a global war to mobilize the U.S. economy out of poverty. The government poured unprecedented billions into scientific research. The Manhattan Project, radar, jet propulsion, sparking an era of rapid technological advancement. But the blueprint for who would control this new technological world had already been drawn decades earlier. The corporate machine had already learned how to kill ideas that couldn't be metered. Enter Nikola Tesla. Tesla hadn't just figured out alternating current, he had figured out how to transmit power efficiently and freely through the air. He built the Wardenclyffe Tower to prove it. A world with free wireless energy would have elevated humanity overnight. But there is no profit in giving power away. When his financier, J.P. Morgan, realized that anyone with an antenna could tap into Tesla's energy without paying, he famously pulled the funding. Morgan, Edison, and Westinghouse shut Tesla down, smeared his reputation, and tore down his tower. Why? So they could string copper wires to every home in America and charge for the privilege. Innovation was only acceptable if it could be put on a monthly billing cycle.
Eight. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Launch commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff with Apollo 14. 3 minutes past the hour. The tower is clear. Houston is controlling.
When the United States wanted to win the future, it didn't leave immigration to chance. Operation Paperclip wasn't just a relocation program, it was a targeted acquisition of the greatest scientific brain trust on the planet. Men like Wernher von Braun were brought over to pioneer our aerospace engineering. They gave us the Saturn V. They gave us the moon. This was immigration as a weapon of mass innovation. Today, the American conversation about immigration has entirely lost that strategic focus. The political theater is obsessively fixated on the undocumented labor force at the southern border. And while the data proves that this labor force is the bedrock of the American physical economy, keeping the agricultural and construction industries from immediate collapse, and paying billions into a tax system they cannot draw from, it is a baseline economic engine. It does not build rockets. It does not cure diseases. The immigration that is supposed to drive innovation is flowing through a completely different pipeline. The F-1 student visas, J-1 research visas, and H-1B specialty occupation visas. But unlike the targeted precision of Operation Paperclip, our modern visa system is actively bleeding our intellectual property to our greatest adversaries. In recent years, the U.S. has hosted over 1 million international students and hundreds of thousands of H-1B workers. We are using American infrastructure, subsidized by American taxpayers, to train the most advanced minds in the world. Nearly 12% of all H-1B high-skill visas are granted to citizens of China, with hundreds of thousands more enrolled in graduate-level STEM and aerospace programs. Dig into the data, and you find tens of thousands of advanced degrees occupied by citizens from heavily sanctioned or adversarial nations. Russia, Iran, Venezuela, and Iraq, to name a few. We bring them. We give them access to the most elite research facilities on Earth. And then, because our H-1B visa lottery is fundamentally broken, our government forces them to leave. We are not importing a brain trust anymore. We are operating a taxpayer-funded R&D boot camp for our geopolitical rivals. While we train foreign nationals and send them home debt-free, what are we doing for our own citizens? That same corporate greed that shut down Nikola Tesla has infected the institutions meant to cultivate American minds. The modern American university is no longer a public service. It is a hedge fund with a campus attached. Universities realized they could charge whatever they wanted because the federal government would blindly underwrite the loans. They didn't use this money to improve education. They used it to chase profit. They expanded administrative bureaucracies by hundreds of percent and hoarded massive tax-exempt endowments. They sold the American dream at a predatory markup, turning students into guaranteed revenue streams.
We'll balance our budget. The Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota remind us that there are large parts of the world where bribery, corruption, and lawlessness.
The breaking point arrived in the mid-2020s. Federal legislation completely gutted graduate loan programs. Medical students were capped at $50,000 a year, while the cost of medical school pushed past $400,000. Graduate nursing students were reclassified, capped at just $20,500 a year. Faced with an impossible financial future, political fatigue, and the daily grind of a for-profit healthcare system, America's most vital professionals did the only logical thing. They left. By April 2026, the exodus was undeniable. Over 1,000 American-trained nurses secured licensure in British Columbia alone. The Medical Council of Canada reported a 750% increase in American doctors initiating the licensing process. But how do they leave with six-figure debt? First, we must dispel the myth: student loans are civil debt. The United States does not extradite its citizens for unpaid student loans. You cannot be arrested at the border. The secret is a perfectly legal financial strategy utilizing the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, or FEIE. When a U.S. citizen moves abroad, they can exclude over $120,000 of their foreign earned income from their U.S. tax return. For many expat nurses and doctors, this drops their U.S. adjusted gross income to exactly zero. By enrolling in an income-driven repayment plan, your monthly federal payment is calculated based on your AGI. If your AGI is zero, your legally required monthly loan payment is $0. They work in Canada or Europe, pay $0 toward their U.S. loans, and wait out the 20-year clock until the debt is federally forgiven. The system isn't failing. It is working exactly as it was designed to. It metered the electricity in the 1900s, and it metered education in the 2000s. We began the 20th century by importing the greatest minds the world had to offer, building an empire of innovation on borrowed genius. We begin the 21st century by actively exporting our own. We train our geopolitical adversaries and send them home to compete against us, while drowning our native-born innovators in so much debt that their only path to survival is to flee the country entirely. Through corporate greed, broken infrastructure, and legislative hostility, the United States has engineered its own brain drain. We are bleeding out the very people trained to keep us alive and propel us forward. The question is no longer how we will attract the next generation of genius. The question is, when the lights finally go out, who will be left to turn them back on?